Hello, everybody. As promised, this is the Test 2 Psych 103 review. I'm just going to make sure that this is set up okay. I think so. Okay, so I've never done this before. Many of you sort of have connected with me and said, hey, none of my teachers have ever done this before. So we'll see how we like it. And if we do like it or we think it works well, then we'll do it again for test 3. If we don't like it and don't think it works well, then we won't do it again. The purpose of me doing this is to use our review time wisely. So this shouldn't be any longer than 15 to 20 minutes, but we'll see. And that way you can be at home, you can pause this, you can watch it again, you can make notes from it, you can pause it and then go find out the answer to a question or look something up and then come back, or again, rewatch it if you find that useful or helpful. So this is the review for the test. This is not the only review. Hopefully from this, if you have any questions, we can go over them on Tuesday's class, and hopefully that's a little bit more useful with our time instead of me just talking at you or telling you and then that being the review. This way, if you are unclear about something, then we can visit it. All right. As you can see, this is my house. So I've locked my kitties out, so I don't think they should be bothering us, which is good. And yeah, so all right. So I did mention in class today, for those of you who weren't there, the test is comprised of 30 multiple choice and 10 marks for short answer. This is test 2, worth 20%. Each test is worth 20%, so you're going to have another test that is worth 20%. So the first question is in regards to cones and rods. Which ones are responsible for color? Which are responsible for black and white? So there's a question on that. So make sure that you revisit the slides or your textbook and figure out the answer to that if you don't remember it or don't already know it. There's a few questions on absolute threshold. So know what those are, know what that means, sort of the definition, that type of stuff. Circadian rhythm. So there's a question about that. We did discuss that in class. It is in your text. So know what that is and sort of a little bit more about what it means, because the question that you're going to be asked, you need to sort of know more than its definition, if you want the correct answer, of course. The question that I left the class with in regards to, it was a homework question, and if we turn the lights off, do things still hold color? So that's come back to revisit us. That kind of stretched out over 2 classes because it was a homework question. So if you remember the correct answer for that, then you'll do fine on this part. If not, connect with your classmates, or we can revisit that. It is in your text in the light part when it talks about colors and light and sensation in the eye. So that's where that information has come from. Speaking of that, next question's to do with what happens when your eye is exposed to a lot of light. So there's a movement that happens. So you're going to be able to have to tell me what movement that is. Kind of is like this, right? So if it was exposed to a lot of light, what would happen? If it was exposed to little light, what would happen? Things like that. So make sure that that you know. So that's actually around 2 questions. You're going to need to not label the eye, but definitely know the different parts of it would be helpful in sort of what they do. So you'd be perhaps more successful on this test if you were able to do that stuff. We spent a little bit of time on sleeping. So a couple questions about sleeping, the stages of sleep, how many are there, and what they're similar to. So let's just say you had one level of sleep that was similar to something else. For example, REM sleep is similar to being awake. So that could be, wink wink, a multiple choice test question. Gestalt, so 2 questions for him. So remember, we did touch briefly on it in class, and it is in your textbook, it is in the slides, so access those on Blackboard. So the different rules. So he had a few different labels for a few different ways that he believes that we perceive things or we interpret that information. So if I were to, let's just say, perceive things moving at the same time, what would that mean? If I saw a group of things grouped together, what would that mean? If there was gaps in information or in stimuli or in sensation, what would that mean? So if you can find in your text or in the notes, or perhaps you just remember from our conversation, definitely know those things, know what they are, and know the labels for them, so you'll be able to pick out the correct answer from the examples provided or given. This light keeps turning off, so you'll notice me messing around with the key thing so it lights me back up. All right. A question about a coiled structure in the ear. So definitely know what that is called, because you'll be able to ask or you'll be able to answer that correctly. The definition of consciousness. So we spent a little while talking about that. So of course that's come back to haunt you on your test. You're going to need to know the definition. Taste. So remember when we had the tongue description, right? Like that. So if I put my finger, what are those different spots on my tongue, and what are they called? So this is something that's fairly easy, but I've put in a couple of it's not a trick question by any means, but if you think you're just going to identify the right answer, make sure you're circling the right one, because they all look roughly the same. So definitely know the, sorry, there's a piece of hair there. Definitely know the right ones. Sleeping disorders. So some examples of what are sleeping disorders, what aren't. So when you look back at the slide or in the book, you're going to have official terms, and you're going to have sort of in brackets, or like that sleep talking or that sleepwalking or those types of things. So know the official terms and know sort of the unofficial terms as well, because they're used interchangeably. So this helps me see if you've actually learned it or if you're just sort of picking it out, right? A question on stimulation. So remember in class when I had you all expose your arm and we ran our fingers across it, we talked about those neurons firing and sort of how that works and what that's about. So there's going to be a question on that. So in your text or in the slides, whatever you prefer, definitely revisit skin and touching and sensory and pain and those things, because there's a question on that. The next question is on motion sickness and what is actually happening during that time. So that is from an in-class discussion. If you missed class once again, or you don't remember, or you didn't write it down, please connect with your classmates. Somebody is bound to absolutely remember that. A lot of people suffer from it, so you might be able to deduct the right answer just from that. And a hint of the correct answer, it has to do with something with evolution. So hopefully you can figure that one out. There is a part in your textbook when, because we're back to absolute threshold now, where it's sort of a blurb on the side. I don't know if it's yellow or gray or pink or something like that, and it gives us the fun examples we talked about in class. So it is on the slides and in your text about, for example, if I dropped a drop of perfume, what would be the amount that would need to be dropped in a whole house for somebody to smell it? Or how many kilometers, I think it was in, can I see a candle on a dark night from far away? So know those in that box and what we talked about in class. So again, it is in the slides, it is in your text. Know those things, because there's a couple of questions dedicated to that. Next, drug tolerance. So the description of that. So what can it best be described of or described from? And of course, there's A, B, C, D. Each multiple choice is A, B, C, D. So you've got 4 options. There are 4 matching. So we did, not matching, like there's not a separate chart, but from the matching in class thing that we did in regards to drugs and their classification. So there's 4 drugs listed, and you get to choose what classification they fall into. So that's why it was important that we did that in class. It is part of the slides. It is in your text. There was a couple I don't think that were, but everything on everything that each one of those questions that are in the test or included in the test are absolutely on the slides and absolutely from your text. So pull out that sheet. Once again, you guys can quiz each other. I know some of you are really good at studying with each other sort of after or before classes stuff. So pull that out, quiz each other, have fun doing it, and that will help you sort of remember, be able to pick these out. There are 3 questions on positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, negative punishment. So be able to, if you guys can get a really good handle on what those definitions are, you'll be able to pick out from the scenario given to you what those are. So that was also a homework piece that was given to you guys to do. And we'll take that up on Tuesday as part of your review and sort of going over your homework. And so if you can really, if you have a good understanding of what positive reinforcement is or negative reinforcement, the same as punishment, you'll be able to absolutely pick those out. It'll be okay. There's a question about the Bobo doll experiment and why this was groundbreaking work, and the definition of reinforcement. There is a bonus mark at the end of the multiple choice. It talks about 2 different conditionings, so that's my hint for that. It came from, I picked it out from your text. It was a yellow box. This is blank conditioning and blank conditioning, something like that. So there's my hint. So find that yellow box, think about what it says. It'll help you sort of decipher between maybe classical conditioning and operant conditioning, and what they mean. So if you can put them in the correct order of what that sentence says, then you could potentially get a bonus mark. All right, so that's it really for the multiple choice. Short answer is next. So just have some more tea here before I start to read that. Okay, so again, the short answer is worth 10 marks. There is a bonus at the end. Your first question talks about describing 2 different methods or conditions where you can experience different levels of consciousness. So we talked about this a little bit. We actually we talked about this a lot. It kind of carried over, and we brought it back, and we had the fun conversation about zombies and things like that, meditation, substance use, being under the influence, and those things. So that's what it's asking you to do, because it's worth 2 marks. So that question is worth 2 marks, and it's asking you to describe that. So I'm not looking for just labels. I'm looking for you to give me a label and then to tell me in your own words, describe how that answers the question. How is being intoxicated or during meditation, how is that a different level or form of consciousness? 5 marks of your short answer, like I told you when I explained earlier today actually in class, are the classical conditioning examples. So you are going to be given scenario A and scenario B, which if you were in class, I alluded to a little bit. If you missed class today, please connect with somebody and say, what did Kelly say the examples were going to be for the classical conditioning marks on the test too, and they should be able to tell you, because a lot of people took notes. So if you find somebody who hasn't taken it down, find somebody who has. Each scenario you'll be given 5 sort of lines that have the listed sort of stimulus or responses that it's looking for. So from the scenario, you're going to take that information and you're going to plug in, for example, an unconditioned stimulus would be blank. Unconditioned response, neutral stimulus, conditioned stimulus, conditioned response. So A has all of those things listed, B has all of those things listed. So A scenario, B scenario. So pick out what the answer is to those, write it down, and that's how you're going to get your marks. I gave you an example flow chart today, or example chart that's going to be attached to your exam as well. Use this when you're doing your homework, and use it sort of when you're writing this test if you need to. And that should help you work through it if you're struggling with it. Some people get it, no problem, and they think, oh yeah, no, this makes sense, it's perfect. Other people, it takes them a little while for the light bulb to go on. I was one of those people. I had to read it a few times when I first learned about it to fully understand what it was looking for, what the stimuluses were, conditioned, unconditioned, all of those things. So Pavlov with his salivating dogs, of course, is the study that did this for us in psychology. And it's sort of the thing I go back to if I think, oh, what is that? And I can then compare, okay, so if this person was the dog and this is what they're doing, and that sort of helps me. So that's why I've attached that flow chart. So if you can plug sort of that scenario into that flow chart, then when you're writing the exam, if you need the assistance of the flow chart, you can absolutely write on it or say, okay, so this is the person, this is the stimulus, or this is the behavior, and hopefully that will help you out a bit, because it can be confusing. And we'll go over that some more too. So the next question that's worth 2 marks is because you're going to be asked to tell me about 2 different theories regarding dreams and what they're about. So we did discuss that in class. It is part of your slides, and it is in the text. I think the text for you visual people actually has pictures depicting representations for each one of the theories. So one theory is residual stuff around the day. For example, I met a student after class today. I met another student after school today. So perhaps tonight I would go home and dream about those conversations. So that would be residual effects. Or perhaps I'll dream about making this video and posting it on YouTube, right? That could be just residual leftover stuff from the day. I could have dreams that are more based in fantasy. So winning the lottery or driving that fancy car or whatever fantasy dreams are about, right? So that is another one. One of the third theories is problem solving. So I could go to bed with perhaps thinking about my life problems or maybe schoolwork problems, stuff like that. And hopefully I'm going to wake up and my brain's done all the work when I'm sleeping, and I'll have all my life problems and homework problems solved. So that's sort of another theory. These theories have labels, and there's a little bit more meat to them. So you need to go find those in your notes or in our slides or text, whatever you prefer, and figure out a little bit more on them than what I alluded to. But as I said, they have labels and a little bit more meat to them. So that's what I'm looking for 2 marks on that. So there is 3 theories. You need to figure out 2 of those 3. The next one is asking you to tell me the difference between substance abuse and dependence. And like I alluded to in class, this is on your exam. It is a short answer question, and I chose this because I feel it is important. We are going to work with a vast community with a whole bunch of problems. A lot of you might stay in this community, a lot of you might go elsewhere. There's our Aboriginal communities, and there's a whole bunch of different problems. So when we're reading legal documents, when we're reading stuff in the news, when we're talking to friends, family, whoever, we need to know the difference between dependence and abuse. If we're helping people, that can make a difference between where we send them for support or help, if we send them for support or help. And it really assists us with our judgment. So we really need to know the difference between that. So I'd like you to tell me the difference between that, which is good. The last but not least bonus mark question. Yay! It's a fun bonus, so it's good. It is about our zombie conversation. So, sorry, that completely went dark on me. I'm not sure how that's going to show up, but we'll see. You don't have to have been there for the zombie conversation to get this bonus mark. If you don't know what a zombie is, typically it is a fictional character that is undead, that runs around eating people's brains or eating human bodies and shuffling, and they don't die and because they're already dead, things like that. So I'm pretty sure we all know what a zombie is. If you don't know what a zombie is, please feel free to Google or YouTube it. So you can use a fictional character, zombie, which is your typical zombie, or you can use the case example that we discussed in class from last summer with the bath salts people were ingesting, or I'm not sure how they become intoxicated from them, but they use them, and it breaks down your senses and sensory stuff, so you're just primitive and you're eating people. And I think a child was eaten or attacked, so was a man on the side of the road was eating his friend, or something like that. So that was last summer. I think we all remember it. We did discuss it in class, like I said. So it's going to be, your bonus question is sort of choose either one of those and relate it to what your opinion is around the conscious level of that, and a little bit more than that, because it's asking you to defend your position as well. So it is fun. Yeah, that's it. So like I said, so this is what I handed you in class. Can you see it? Yep. So that is the flow chart I was talking about. It is at the end. And that will be sort of at the end of the 10 mark questions. They'll be at the back. So this ended up being about 22 minutes, so quicker than me standing at the front of the class and just telling you what's going to be on the exam or writing it down and having people scribble for notes. Hopefully you have found it helpful. We will go over some stuff we didn't go over today on Tuesday, as well as I will answer any of your questions from this video. So this is your test review for number 2, and please do your homework, review this, and we'll talk about any confusing things, or if people aren't sure of something or would like me to explain something a little bit more on Tuesday. And hopefully this will make it a little bit more enriched and a better usage of your time for your review. All right. Okay. Bye guys. Have a good night.